Hey YouTube. So this is my first time ever doing something like this, and I'm trying to do it justice because I want to work in transparency. And when you're talking about anything spiritual, anything about spiritual matters, you always have to go in it with a sense of respect and care, because I understand that these are people's beliefs. So I try to do it with respect. In doing so, the way I know how to respect people's beliefs and religious backgrounds, spirituality, anyway, is to respect how people believe, not only doing that, but also respecting what scripture supports as well. A lot of the times, people will do scriptural applications to things that don't apply. And that's the reason why we're getting into the Marvin Sapp thing. I did a short talking about it, and I was poking a little fun like everybody else is doing, but I found issues still. He gave an explanation, and we'll go into the explanation, but I still found some issues, and not trying to poke holes in everything, but I'm just like, I still found issues because a little bit of background on myself. I grew up in Christianity. I grew up between non-denominational Baptist to Kojic, the whole nine. I was a church kid. I was not either in the church or doing church activities. I was in youth groups. I was in the choir. Not only was I in the choir, what else did I do? I would do praise dancing. Even as an adult, I would do like the ministry on the weekends where we were doing like food distributions, anything that you could think of. And I was in a choir as an adult, so I know how church stuff goes. I know how you do from the time you walk in the building to the time you walk out the building, all the procedures. I know that. One thing that I didn't really particularly care for is people can still find fault in something going on in an organization, even if they're not necessarily a part of it. Because a lot of people, they can still have common sense and they'll know how they would like to be treated, even if they're not in there. So him saying like, hey, you guys ain't been to church in a while, or who haven't been to church, or who not currently in the church, this is how we do things. Well, no, that's how you do things, and it's common. There's how a lot of churches do things, and this is not to say that all churches are this way. That's not to say that this is the norm for everybody. But being a black church kid, I grew up with a lot of this, and I take issue with prosperity preaching. I take issue with, getting people emotionally in a tizzy, essentially, before they started asking for money. I have issues with possible corruption within churches, how they're getting funds. Like there's a whole lot of spiritual manipulation in our vulnerable populations, especially in the black community, on how people get funds for things. Another thing I'd like to say is ministry does have a cost to it. That's not to say that you can't do it in a certain way that doesn't isolate or harm people, because I think it's a way that you do it. I know a lot of churches, they do fundraising. Hey, I'm a rolling minister. I don't make a whole lot of money doing this, but if you want me to continue to give you the word, is it okay that you donate to my ministry so I can continue to get the word out to people? That's fine. People can donate to that. Not saying you need to donate this certain amount. So let's just get into it. I wrote down some notes so I can keep myself together, and I don't want this to be too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into the scripture that he was talking about, because if you're going to apply it, I want to make sure that what you're applying it to actually makes sense and that it's appropriate, because I think that people like to inappropriately apply scriptures where it doesn't belong, and I'm a staunch believer in not doing that. I think if scripture says something, it says something. I think if scripture talks about something specifically, it's talking about something specifically. God doesn't really work in confusion anyway, so he's not going to say, well, this applies to 700 things. Like he's like, oh, I was talking about this, but I understand how you can get the application in for other things, but he was talking about something specific. What he was talking about, which is, well, actually, let me go back. Let me start with some facts. Fact of the matter was, he was asking, and I need to correct myself from that short, he was asking $20 per person in the congregation. If 1,000 people gave $20, that's $20,000. He then challenged them, how about we get it up to 40? That's what he said. But for the clergy, that's $100. So if we have people in the audience giving 20, then the clergy giving 100, then the people who are watching from home sending in money, we can get up to $40,000, right? This was not his church. he was actually visiting, and he was doing a convention. They were putting on a convention, a national convention. That means there was multiple churches involved, multiple people involved. So when they were putting on this convention, the convention had a cost. In order for them to get back the money in that they put out, then they're asking people to put in $40,000, raising $40,000 for that convention that they already put on. That means that someone had to front the money in the first place, which I don't know where the money came from. Maybe they raised it, maybe they put in their own money. Who knows? But most definitely, if you enjoyed this word and you enjoyed getting this word and you got something out of it, you need to then pay for it. Because it costs for me to be up in this pulpit. It costs for me to travel. It costs for me, and I need you guys to pay that back because I'm out there. And people may not interpret it that way, but that's how cost is. So I'm like, that's how I interpret it, that they have to fund that convention, that the people are funding that convention. Another thing is, it happened last year. This is not actually a recent event. It just happened to circulate around online. So that's what happened. And he gave the explanation on the Ricky Smiley show. He said that he was actually raising the money for the convention. He actually doesn't know how much money actually got raised. He was hoping that he exceeded the 40,000 because then it would help put back money into that organization. He said that everybody who's a church kid or who goes to church knows the program. During altar call, offerings, or prayer, nobody should be walking. That's what he said. So he said that because it's such a sacred time, which I'm just going to say that I need to figure out where the biblical basis is for him saying that giving of offering is and all that stuff or whatever during that time it's sacred. I think that it just keeps it more organized where you're able to kind of like know who's giving what and just no confusion. It's just a more organized way. I just know that in the Black community we just kind of like do some things in an organized way, so it's not a whole lot of confusion. But I didn't know that the ceremony of giving the offering was the sacred ceremony that we were all required to do. I didn't know that, but hey, somebody else correct me if I'm wrong. But during prayer, I can see how that's sacred. And I can see how during altar call, when you're calling souls and trying to get people over to Christ and how you're trying to pray for people or release demons and all that stuff, I can see how that's sacred. I just didn't know that during the time where people were giving offering or whatever, that it's just not considered sacred or whatever to be walking around. I don't know, but I could be wrong. That's the reason why during that time he said he told them to close the doors, because during that time nobody should be walking. He also said it was a safety reason because people get robbed during that time. That's what he said. I don't know. I'm not saying churches haven't gotten robbed. I've never been robbed during offering time. I've never been to a church that got robbed during offering time. I don't know if this is just a thing that happens across the board. I don't know. But he said that he needed to make sure of safety too. So you got to close the doors, which I'm like, I'm still not sure how you keep people safe during that time. Because if you said that you didn't have the doors locked while they were doing it and then secured the money before the doors were unlocked, anybody can still walk in and out of the sanctuary anyway. So I don't really see the point of being like, y'all better close them doors, close the doors. Another thing that was a little bit off to me is you saying, close the doors, y'all ain't going nowhere anyway, but to go spend y'all money on what y'all want to, which is food anyway. And I'm just like, sir, that actually makes your argument a little bit less credible. That lets me know that you're like, hey, y'all ain't gonna do nothing but spend y'all money somewhere else. Y'all might as well give it to this organization anyway. Because it's also the words that you use. Like, I'm listening to what you're saying too. So I'm like, there was just a little bit of in that for me. I ain't like that. One thing that I know also happens in a lot of these churches and organizations is, and somebody made a really, really good point. And I'm going to get back to the scripture that he put, but I also want to get into the fact that I have been in the church my whole life and I felt manipulated by scripture or manipulated by prosperity preaching or obligation to give type of preaching. And I think they have the same, it's almost like they read from the same book, like they have the same playbook and they do it the exact same way everywhere to make sure that people are giving to their cause, not necessarily to what God called, but to their cause. And this one person in the comments made a really good point. And I don't know if I'm gonna shout out to him or whatever, Marquise Brown. If you ever see my YouTube, I'm shouting you out or whatever. But he said that he's a musician and he's been in a church raised with that background. And he says what he often sees is, and I'm with him on this, is At these conferences, they disguise themselves as spiritual gatherings while primarily serving as a money-making venture. They invite prominent pastors, singers, celebrities to generate excitement and draw people in. Once the attendees are there, they leverage the presence of these well-known figures to encourage donations, knowing that many look up to them. The funds collected are then used to cover their fees, along with payments from musicians, lighting, sound technicians, and of course hosting churches or the pastor. They also be paying the pastors and stuff. Not saying that Marvin got any money from this. He said it went to the convention. But I'm like, that's exactly the type of treatment that I've seen my entire life that I've never really liked. So my question is, if it really is a biblical thing for the giving, why not apply it to actually how Christ got his money? And I'm not saying Christ was out there collecting cash from people, but his ministry was actually funded by his followers. He didn't really have money of his own. He didn't, have a lot of money. So his followers, generosity, disciples, and wealthy women funded him. And that very money that Christ got, of course he had to eat, he had to sleep, they probably had to grab places to be or whatever, clothe themselves. But that very money wasn't just going in his pocket. He actually was putting it back out to those people he was still ministering to. He fed people, he clothed people. He actually didn't just worry about your spiritual part of you, but also the physical, because we lived in the very physical world. So Christ also made sure in his ministry, because ministry cost, that whatever money he was getting, putting back out to the people as well. And that's not what happens in these conventions a lot of the time. It's to fund the convention itself so they can keep the convention going. And I'm guessing that they needed to get a return on it. So let me actually go to the scripture. And me doing this video for a second time, I still don't have this pulled up, which I need to get better at this. Again, this is my first time doing it. And I'm not going to try to read every single thing because this would just make this video too long. But I am going to get to the main points that I'm trying to say when it comes up to giving and charitable giving and giving because you want to. So it was actually Chronicles 1:29. King David said to the whole assembly, "My son Solomon, whom the one whom God chose," and this is the New International Version because it's easier to read, "is young and inexperienced, and the task that he's about to get is great." Okay, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And he said, "But it's for the Lord. With all the resources that I have provided for the temple." And what he does is he goes down a list, and I'll just tell you some of the things: gold, bronze, onyx, turquoise, stones, and marble. And he's going through telling everybody not only how much money I put into it, but why I'm putting into it. I want to, put crowns on things, gold and silver for the temple. I have provided for this holy temple 3,000 talents. So he's saying I put money in, which I guess that's what Marvin was saying. I put money into this, so I fronted my own money for this. So he then tells the people, which I guess is Marvin's challenge was, "Now who is willing to consecrate themselves to the Lord today?" Notice he said willing. He said willing to consecrate themselves. And then he said that it said that all the leaders put their money in first. It literally said leaders of families, officers, tribes, Israelite commanders, they all put in willingly. And then the people saw that and they started taking their jewels off, anything that they had on them, they started giving it because they saw how willing that the heads were willing to give. So they wanted to give too for the cause of the temple. That's the reason why I don't think that what he's saying applies to this, because he's not erecting God's temple, the temple of David. The money was going towards the temple of David. So you saying that people have a spiritual obligation to give towards your cause, it's not God's cause. I'm not saying that your ministry isn't important, but God gave specific reasons why this temple was to be erected for the people. And then David said he was going to put money in to make sure that the temple was erected, and Solomon was supposed to finish it off, right? So he asked the people, he said, "Is anybody out here willing to put money in? I'm putting my money in. Are y'all going to put y'all money in too?" He didn't give them an amount. He didn't say that they had to. He said that, is anyone willing? And everybody was willing. And David greatly rejoiced. And all the people wholeheartedly rejoiced because they saw how everybody else was giving. Now, this is a part that gets me. If you go way down in the scripture, it says, "But who am I and who are my people that should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you. And what we are giving comes from your hand. So he's saying that, God, because you gave it first, I'm giving it back. That shows willingness, not close the doors and all that stuff or whatever. That's the part that I'm trying to get at, is the amount should not have mattered if it was coming from a real genuine place. You guys had an amount that y'all went in there with was 40,000, and y'all were determined to get that 40,000 off those people. Whereas in King David, he actually ended up receiving more than what he needed, because God made a way for them to get that, because the people were willing to give that. And then it also, and this is my last point, and I'm letting this go. It talks about, I lost my place. Sorry. He said, I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity. He tests the heart and is pleased with integrity. Can you say the way that you got that money off them people was with integrity, and God was pleased with the way you did that? I don't care what church protocols y'all do or whatever and how y'all do it. The way that you went about it, in my opinion, was still awful. That's the reason why people are turning away from churches like that. Because if all I had was $20 to get me through the week or whatever, and I spent my money to get to the convention, I may not have an additional 20. Also, I don't like people calling people's money out in public. I don't like you calling the clergy out. I don't like you calling people out in the audience, telling them to bring. You don't know what those people's situations are. That's why he said, is there anyone willing? He didn't make nobody feel singled out. He didn't make nobody feel challenged. He just said, is there anybody willing? And that's the difference between King David, that was consecrated by God, and you.